Hi, and welcome to Between the Lines. I'm Ronda Caudill, and Michelle Cornwell-Jordan is my co-host, and today we have TJ Muir. Hi, TJ.
Hi,
Hi.
TJ.
Hi.
I'm so glad you're here. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Taking a nice break from the summer heat, and I always love these things. Doing talks like this is a great chance for me to chat with people that I don't stay in touch with as well as I should.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle and I, we always chat back and forth, and I haven't really talked to you in a while, so it's just kind of a great time to touch. I know. I feel so bad.
And me too. I'm like, but I'm glad we're getting to chat now.
If it wasn't for Facebook, most of the people that I know wouldn't really know I was alive.
Well,
it's like, I saw you post last week. I know you're okay.
Well, I'm sure that the people that I know want me to shut up sometimes because I'm like, oh, like enough. Go on vacation. Do something.
Yeah, well, when I start talking, I'll chat for a while. So I'm either on or off. There's no in between.
Well, that's very, very cool. Why don't you just tell about yourself?
Hold on. My dog just picked this exact moment to bark at something, so I'm just going to close the door because there's never anything there. I've got a pretty diverse background. Like I said, I've got everything from master's degree in education and do a lot of work, educational kind of work. But I have made swords for a living. I have done all kinds. Yeah, I've had a very eclectic background. I'm trained as a shaman, as a body worker, and as an herbalist. So all these different things really kind of come together, and I've kind of gone back into fiction writing because I really have found that creating stories is really what inspires me.
That is.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yes, and I love it. You're like one of the coolest, people I know. I love that.
Cool and crazy. There's a really fine line between those two things.
It's funny, we were just talking about inspiration yesterday on one of the chats. So what inspires you in your writing?
What inspires me in my writing? I would say that it's a combination of two things. One, a lot of my spiritual, comparative religion, and anthropology background has given me a lot of kind of insights or inquiries, I guess, about how people lived before modern culture. There was a really good book I read several years ago called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn that kind of asks the question, how we lived so long and balanced our environment, and in the last less than 500 years, we've kind of gone terribly astray from that balance and what went wrong. And that was really interesting because for me, that kind of was one of the first times that I saw in writing delving into asking those kinds of questions and kind of exploring whether it's alternative histories or alternative concepts and alternative ways of thinking. And so I kind of combined that approach with what if. And I very often will just have a what if. And that's kind of what inspired the beginning of this whole series that I've started writing, which is, start out with just a simple what if of, what if everybody could see auras? What if astrology actually, you could feel the impacts on your kind of daily life a little more? What if we were just a little bit more like a half a plane higher than we were in terms of like maybe say cosmic vibration, and how that play out. And so you start with what if, and I think I had part of this conversation with Michelle the last time we chatted, and it goes through all stages of, well, of course it would be utopia. And then you go, well, no, why would it be? We have this vision that if we had a special power, if we had a special ability, that we would somehow automatically rise above ourselves and become the best versions of ourselves. And I think instead what happens is we still struggle between those elements of ourselves, the person and the place we'd like to be and the person we'd like to see ourselves as. But getting kind of tripped over ourselves and our own desires and our own needs. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. That's very, very cool. Where did you? I mean, I know that you study, the subject, and you've worked with it for years. Is that where the idea for book and your writing, or was it something, a defining moment that happened that sparked you to say, okay, I need to write this down?
Was there a defining moment? In other words, as far as as far as this book or writing fiction in general, or I'm not sure exactly on the question there.
Well, both. But I was meaning this particular release.
All right, this particular book, what was the defining moment of this? This book actually, believe it or not, did not start out to be a book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got about 90% of book one of a series written, and it's right now back burner, because one of the things that I do, and I've really taken to heart, I don't know if we had this conversation in an earlier chat, is I started writing character sketches and backstories for minor characters. And I had a minor character, Jeddah, who is this is loose terminology, let's say half human, half elf, kind of a crossbreed magic user. Well, I don't like to use the generic terms because that simplifies things a lot, and I think it pigeonholes readers into expectations.
Yes.
But so I had a minor character, Jeddah, who shows up because my main character has a problem. And I started writing a character sketch and thinking about who this character was. And it just it just had so much story to tell. So it started, this story, Before the Luck Runs Out, is this magic user's backstory. And it started as a short story, and it just grew. And so right now it is somewhere between novella and novel. And so my plan is to help it grow just a little bit more, so that it's a full book on its own. But again, it started out with what if, and it says, okay, so who is this person? And I put him in the world that I have. I mean, it's magic, but it's also kind of a pre-industrialized technology. Like, say, for example, like things that Da Vinci was designing and thinking about, before we had steam power, before we had engine, before we had electricity and all those other things.
Right.
A lot of ancient cultures really had some incredible sophistication in terms of technology and advancement. It just wasn't powered the way we have our culture powered. So it's a combination of alternative civilization development and magic. And I put this kid in a city that, high degree of corruption, poverty. He's poor. He grew up as an orphan, stealing in the streets. And what happens when? Because as someone who has a potential use for magic, how has that been influencing his life? And again, when I use the term astrology, but I don't know if I mean that specifically right now. But for my magic race, the Chanmyr, the universe kind of tends to align to move them where it wants them to go. And so he ends up getting caught stealing from a powerful lord who recognizes a gift in him and says, I can use this, and cultivates that and grooms him to be his personal tool. So, so how does the universe put people in places that may seem disadvantaged, like when he gets caught stealing, that actually turns into being an advantage because it was actually trying to accomplish something on a bigger picture?
Wow. Very.
You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of trying to, it's looking at how the universe, and I use the term universe in kind of a broad section, whether you want to talk about animated or just events or cosmology or just, that kind of quantum randomness. Things play out in ways that we can't perceive. It's kind of like the difference between being on a chessboard and being able to step back and see the chessboard. Mm. So I think that's kind of what inspired this. What's that?
You're incredible. It's like, woo! You make my mind expand. I speak with you. That is awesome.
So Jetta's story in Before the Luck Runs Out is his evolution when he's been kind of grown up in this world, and he thinks, wow, I've got this great meal ticket, and this guy's taking great care of me now, and, and he becomes friends with the people he's been spying on, and then what happens now? Where is his allegiance? Where are his loyalties when he starts thinking about the implications and the morality of what he's doing? And then his magic wakes up. Oh. And then it's like, what? Now where is it going to take him?
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I definitely want to check that. That's very cool. Love it. It sounds, it sounds right down, we were speaking about Denise. Denise. And that is so in line with a lot of the things, she writes about and, she talks about. So that's very, very cool.
And Denise and I have been on a very similar page and wavelengths as far as our own personal worldviews. And she also, that same concept of, whether you want to say there are higher powers or there's an animistic element in the universe, but learning how for people to think about the impact of what we do and the ripples it makes and what ripples we get caught in as well. One of the things that I've kind of not bumped heads with, but very often people say, oh, well, everything happens for a reason. And I'm like, no, sometimes shit just happens. What you do with it, whatever, but sometimes shit just happens. It's not there's some big whatever. It's like, no. But what you do with those moments
is
defining.
The cause and effect, correct? How I react to it will make this particular ripple or whatnot.
Exactly.
Well, I think I'm getting it. Yes. Very cool.
Sometimes somebody just drops a stone in the water. It's like the beginning of a ripple. Sometimes something just happens. Right. You can't say that, oh, well, something wanted that to happen, yada, yada, yada. It's like, no, you just happen to be in the wrong spot at the wrong time. And what you make of that opportunity or catastrophe, will define you going forward. But the fact that you happen to be in that random spot is not because you deserved some punishment or lesson. Does that make sense?
I got you.
He's so deep.
Although, what's that?
You're so deep. Your thought process is just so deep.
Well, hopefully, then it's funny because, this is kind of getting into kind of some of the philosophy behind, although ironically, that would be within these books a little bit more of the human side of the universe, whereas the magical race, they are much more in tune with that cosmic flow, and so they have random events happen much less often, and they're much more guided by where is the universe, where are their deities, moving them and shifting them forward. But even the gods in this world are random. Sometimes things happen because one of the things that I think that in our mortal perspective of the chessboard we forget is that gods, deities, higher powers, they live. And this is my opinion here. I'm not speaking from any voice of authority. I haven't sat down and had any chats with the people up above. So, this is not a pipeline from God. But I can't imagine, but that they don't perceive, process, plan, etc. on scales and dimensions that are so far beyond human comprehension.
Okay, very.
That, we think that every absolutely little thing has been watched over and whatever. And it's just like, that's like trying to keep track of 1,000 ants in an ant colony that all look alike. Can you really keep all of them exactly in track?
Definitely.
Or do you just know that they're generally going from here to there, or they're generally doing this? You know, I don't know if that made any sense, if that kind of gave it an example.
I do. What I'm getting, the sense I'm getting is that, you know, we have choices, and, you know, our actions or our decisions create our existence is what I'm getting an understanding of what you're saying. And I agree with that.
Right. A little bit, but also I think what I'm trying to say is, like, people say, oh, well, say, I'm going to give a context. God wants me to do X. Well, God might want something to kind of move in a direction, but I don't know that gods or deities really look at the day-to-day level, because for us, that's the consciousness we move at.
Yes.
You know, where a deity might be like time shifting so much of a different way that they might perceive generations the way we perceive days.
I get you. Yes. Yes. Okay. Have you always believed in this particular concept, or when did?
I was actually raised very traditional religion. I actually was raised. I went to Catholic schools and had all of the standard catechism. And I don't disclaim the teachings of Orthodox and organized religion. I just think that, as a general rule, we tend to find and use religion as a tool of divisiveness, as opposed to understanding how that it should be bringing us together. Because so many religions have a very similar core message, and yet we'll get caught in a minutia of a belief or an ideology as opposed to the core, and say, well, my religion is right and your religion is wrong.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if that made any sense. And we take that minutia, we take these in a lot of ways what I would call inconsequential details, and find reasons to create otherness, and say, you don't believe, you're not right, you're worshiping a false god, or however somebody might frame it, as opposed to saying, we're all trying to get closer to God. We're all trying to become the better versions of ourselves, and that's great that you're on the path. If there's a big mountain, whatever side of the mountain you start climbing on, it all goes to the top.
That's what you're saying. I like that. I like that. Okay, you're saying whatever the path, we're still going towards the same.
We're all working towards, back towards that source, back towards that peace, back towards that,
I like that.
that connection that we lose, at birth.
Okay, I like that, Terry.
But so anyway, any other? I mean, I don't know if I don't know if this is getting off top. I don't mind. I'll chat about almost anything. But I didn't know if there was. Well, you want to talk about peanuts? We can talk about peanuts.
I'm a little bit curious as to who were the authors that influenced you.
Okay, so in education, I actually I was a major in literature, so I got a very broad, exposure, especially since when I changed schools, I ended up graduating with like 70 English literature credits that were mostly upper division. But as far as influences, I would say one of the influences would be Joseph Conrad, who was one of the first modern authors. And I think the thing that intrigued me, and I remember the first time I read one of his books, I was like, man, this is boring, it sucks. But, totally, I was like, why? But then it was when I read it in my freshman year in college, and when we started taking it apart and I started thinking and understanding symbolism and imagery and the shift and the question of, is this character a hero? You know, and thinking about what does it mean. And so it was one of the first times I really looked at, and actually one of the things that really appreciate about Joseph Conrad is he uses a lot of black and white imagery, you know, and uses black and white imagery very subtly, but he's using black and white imagery in ways that are looking at issues that are very gray. So even right there, there's, you know, that juxtaposition, I think. I'm not sure what I mean. What I'm trying to say there. I don't know if it made sense, but the subtlety and the nuance of delving into what are the questions that this writer is trying to is asking, not necessarily answering, but asking. And that, I think, is one of the things that really started to intrigue me as far as some literature. I've read a lot about medieval literature and medieval history as well. And I was really fascinated by that until I really studied medieval history and I realized the Middle Ages were nothing like we perceive them.
Okay. And how you've piqued my interest.
Okay.
What do you
about the Middle Ages?
Yes.
Well, for starters, you can look at things like Catherine of Aragon. I'm pretty sure it was Aragon. Prided herself on only having taken 2 baths in her entire life.
Okay. Ew.
Okay.
Ooh.
Just think about that for a second, you know?
Oh, I can't even go past this.
That they, you know, very often didn't have sewage. You had, you know, sewage running down drains in the middle of the roads in the villages. They peed against the walls especially in the winter, you know, indoors. You know, that the lifestyle, I mean, it wasn't barbaric, but it really was nothing near what we perceive it as being, right down to the language. I remember I studied Shakespeare and Chaucer, and having read Chaucer in the original, a lot of people don't realize, even the language, up until, I don't want to say precisely when, was Germanic.
Okay.
If you look at a lot of these medieval kind of stories and medieval kind of settings, you know, they all speak very pure, courtly Elizabethan English. Mm-hmm. When no one spoke like that.
Gosh, you know, and I think about that. I mean, because, you know, we do have these grand notions of the middle. At least I grew up on the romances in the Middle Ages, and so that is a little heartbreaking.
Yeah, very. As I say, and keep in mind, the word romance comes from Bildens Roman or Roman, which means long rather than about courtly love.
Okay.
The concept of courtly love, and actually it's interesting because if you want to look at Arthurian legends and Arthurian work, which is one of the prime examples, everything we know of Arthur is based. There are 2 prime sources. One was Geoffrey of Monmouth and one was Thomas Malory, and I'm not always sure which is which in terms of where they fall. But the earliest depictions of King Arthur were all about him being a strong warrior, about him uniting, and it was all about, you know, that. But what we have inherited, and I want to say it's Geoffrey of Monmouth, is the Elizabethan translation or rendition of earlier stories about Arthur, where it all becomes about courtly love, which are more reflective of the Elizabethan times than anything that was going on in Arthurian period of history. Does that make sense?
That does. It's very cool. I'm learning a lot today.
You know, the myth of Arthur is twofold, and I'm sure that, you know, one, it was really about England becoming united from warring tribes to, we might not necessarily get along, but we dislike them more than we dislike each other, and so it was getting Rome out of England.
Okay, very cool. I love history. And
oh yeah, it's fascinating.
I can hear you. I can really hear you talk about it all day, but I don't want.
Yep, that's fine. I totally hear you.
Because I want to make sure we can hear more about your books you know,
Okay.
well, this is related to what you were just saying. Do you think that
Yep.
you ever write a resource about what you were discussing about history, or you know, another, you know, or something in history, another genre? Will you ever write in that genre?
I don't know. I have a feeling what I will probably intend to do is just weave in little bits of what I know into the stories that I write.
Okay. Okay.
You know, again, that's why I said I'm not really setting out to try and write medieval period kind of a culture, but I certainly could take certain facets of things like that, and find ways to bring them into
very cool
my stories.
I love it. I love it. I do. You know, and so when I'm serious when I say I can listen to you all day.
Like one of the aspects, like I said, and actually this kind of tie back in. I remember when I was I was studying Charles Dickens, and I don't sell him short in the least. He's a brilliant writer. And interestingly, he is almost kind of the counterpart to a lot of today's digital age, because he wrote in installments, and people's feedback would affect what he would choose to do with characters.
Really?
Kind of really cool. Yeah.
I didn't
but
know
anyhow,
that.
yeah, it was very cool. What would happen is he would write and it would come out in installments in a periodical, and very often one person would read the story like in a pub or something, so other people could hear it, because not everyone was literate as well. But they would all get pissed off at something happening or this or that, and you know, and it was almost like the equivalent of internet buzz, you know. And it would get back to him, and he would know. He would decide, you know, this was really good, this really worked, or that didn't work. But one of the things we were talking about in my seminars in college is Dickens's heroes. Let's use Oliver Twist as a perfect example. He grows up as an orphan in the South Side, I think the South Side of England, which is the equivalent of a ghetto in a lot of ways. And yet somehow he speaks perfect upper-class English. Like that somehow inherently, just because he was, you know, so one of the things I did with my character, Jetta, is he doesn't speak well. He's grown up, you know, kind of homeless orphan on the streets. You know, he speaks street slang. He doesn't speak with good grammar. And one of the experiences he has with his patron, his benefactor, you know, is when he corrects him and the kid looks at him, and for the first time he starts thinking about the fact that different people speak differently. He becomes conscious of the fact that there is. And that happens in our world today. I mean, I don't know if people become conscious of it, but your speech, your grammar, and how you present all intuitively, I'm not sure that's quite the word I want, reflect your social status.
That is true.
So anyway, but Jetta, yeah, part of his training or schooling is he's taught to speak. You know, taught to speak the way his patron will need him to speak. And he doesn't see himself as much as being groomed so much as it's, you know, his patron does it seamlessly enough that he's not aware of the fact that he's kind of being turned into a tool. You know, he sees this as a great opportunity. All of a sudden, you know, he's getting paid just to kind of wander around and listen to conversations and bring information back to this guy. And he's like, this is an easy buck. You know, I've never been paid for listening to shit before.
It's like a blog, you know, we're bloggers. Well, we're down to about 7 minutes, so we're going to see if Rhonda got something.
I just like a backlist. How long have you been writing? Do you have several books? I'd just like to know what you've written. I would like to pull up a few and read them.
I have a handful of nonfiction books I write under a different name, which is neither here nor there. I am just now diving into, you know, the fiction world. And this whole world is really, as you can tell, it's kind of really blossomed and evolved into a rich and fully developed world. So before the luck runs out, which it's a I know this is going to make no sense. Technically, it's a prequel, but it's a prequel that's coming out before the actual series. So somebody said, well, isn't that just book one? And I was like, Not really, because it's a companion story more than the main thread of where we're going in the series. But I've got a couple of free short stories out that, as I said, I write character stories for a lot of the minor characters, which has been the best godsend that ever happened when I started doing that, because it really gives perspectives and insights. It opens up realms and dimensions that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. You know, it adds a whole different whole layers to weave into. You know, very often, I don't know, again, I'm not a super seasoned, veteran, but I can see that with like book one, you have an idea and a story of where you're going, and by having done the character stories on, like I said, people that barely show up, all of a sudden I have a whole other layer of nuance that weaves in to the main story.
Love that. Where can,
like I said, there are stones, but now I have pebbles that also make ripples.
That is real cool. Where can everyone? We are actually really low on time. We have about 4 more minutes.
Okay.
Where can everyone touch base with you? Grab copies of your short stories, and watch out for the release.
Yep. I have a Facebook page that I can send you the link to. I don't know. Do you post things to the audience? Do you have a spot on Zoom that does that?
Yes.
So I can send you a link to my Facebook page, which is probably the best way to keep tabs with what I'm up to.
Okay.
And I don't know that I set up an author page yet on Amazon for my, for the series, because I write under 2 different names. So I'll have to look at that. But I would say Facebook is probably the best first place to check, and I will get the link on that, doing that kind of multitasking while we're talking.
Well, you're awesome. Well, Terry, thank you so much for just hanging out with us. Is there anything that you would like the viewers to say to the viewers before we close out, or?
I'd like to say to the viewers, thanks for having me, first of all. It's always fun to chat. And it's funny when you said viewers, I forget that I'm calling in as opposed to, being a viewer. And please, download my free stories and give me feedback like Dickens. Writers want to create, powerful worlds and powerful stories that are going to move you and affect you and change you and have that impact on you as a reader. And we do that so much better when we can hear from you what works or what doesn't. Kind of like Dickens, like people are like, oh, that was great, I need more of that. Then we know, okay, let's go this way.
Very cool.
So, yeah, check out my stories and give me feedback. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Well, Terry, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I just love chatting with you when we're on Facebook or groups or panels or wherever we are. So thank you so much. And you've got to, come back, especially during the release. And so
I will happily come back. And I'm sending you the link for my Facebook page. It's TJ Muir Author at Facebook.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll have that all set out there for the viewers. Rhonda. Hey, thank you for hanging out.
And I think I did also send you really quick. I sent you a link, I think, for one of the short stories, novellas, whatever. It's before When the Wind Calls. That's free. You can put that down for your viewers to take a look at that. Perfect. We'll get that out there to them. Thank you so much. Rhonda, thank you for hanging out.
As always.
And we want to say, Denise, we miss you. Denise Guru will be back to Between the Lines in August. And we're looking forward to having her back. And she'll be back taking the reins. And so, Denise, we wanted to give you a shout out. All right, guys, that is it. We just thank you so much for taking the time to chat or listen to our chat. We hope you'll connect with TJ Muir. And have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.